Okay friends, before we get started on this job, it's important to remember that you want to flush out your cooling system first. The reason for that is because you want to have nice new coolant in with your nice new part. Okay friends, before we get started on this job, we need to talk about one thing, and that's safety. You want hand and eye protection at all times. With that said, we're going to get under the hood along the passenger side and we're going to drain that coolant. Okay, obviously you want to make sure you have a collection bucket under there because coolant will contaminate the environment and or stain your floor. Also, you want to have a nice directional hose like this. This is going to make it easy to direct the coolant when it comes out of the petcock. I'm just going to slide that right onto the petcock tube here, and then I'm going to aim it towards where my bucket's going to be. That's going to help me out. At this point, we're going to loosen up this little nut right there, and that's going to allow the fluid to come out. Get this nice and loose. That feels pretty good. As the fluid starts coming out, now we're going to make our way over to the driver's side and open up the radiator cap. We'll just open this up. Set it aside. While we have that coolant draining, we're going to start taking this plastic off of here. If you look along the top, you're going to see these little push clips. In the center, there's a Phillips head. You can use a Phillips head screwdriver, or for me, I usually like to try to get underneath the center, twist, and pop it up. This actually works much better overall. And once you get it up and out of there, you can of course take off the outer piece as well. And I just kind of put them together so they're good for safekeeping. We're going to remove them all, and then we'll get this right off of there. Okay, get this out of here. Let's get our coolant hoses off of here. Some coolant might come out. Let's get the upper hose from the passenger side. To get the fan shroud out of here, we're going to need to get the fan off, of course, at the same time. To do that, you would use a 36 millimeter, and you can either use a wrench, if you have a big old wrench, and maybe a hammer of some sort to bonk this free. Or you can use the special tool that's made for it. It's a fan clutch tool. It's just going to go right over that nut for the fan clutch and then drive it counterclockwise. Go ahead and spin this off of here. There we are. Looking along the side / top of the fan shroud, you're going to see there's two mounting bolts, one on the driver's side and one on the passenger side. Remove them both. At this point, we can wiggle this around. We're going to try to sneak it out of here. Now that we have all that out of the way, we have a nice clear view of our belt and, of course, the tensioner. Take note of the direction that the belt goes in and or the routing. And then, of course, we're also going to come right here to the tensioner with our serpentine belt tool, and we're going to remove that serpentine belt. We'll get this right out of the way, and, of course, get our tool off there. Now we're going to get the pulley off of the water pump. To do that, I like to use a nice flathead screwdriver, and I'll come across the bolt just like this. Then I'll use my 10 millimeter over here, and that'll make it so it's holding the water pump and I can loosen it at the same time. I'm going to leave that bolt right in there just like that. It's going to give me something nice to grip onto, and now the next bolt's going to be even easier. Nice little hammer. Just going to use a tiny bit of penetrant. Now I'm going to use my pry bar. I'm going to try to get this pulley off of here. Okay, it's definitely moving. There we are. Set this aside. Now we're going to go ahead and use a forky tool, or pretty much anything you got, and we're just going to get the wiring off of this bracket right here. Just pull that down. At this point, I like to spray the area down with a little bit of penetrant. I'm going to go along the area where the bolt is, see if I can get down near where the bracket goes to where the water pump is, and then also, if you were to pay attention to this tube and go below this, you're going to see the area where the tube goes into the water pump. That's going to be super important to try to get a little bit of penetrant in. I'm going to use my 8 millimeter. I'm going to break this bolt free. Switch tools so I have a little bit more space. Now I'm going to try to shake this around a little bit. As you can tell, it doesn't want to break free. That's very common. I'm just going to get the wiring out of the way, and I'm going to use a small hammer. Just give it a couple loving bonks. I'm trying to see if this is going to want to break free. It doesn't seem as though it is. The only thing that seems to be happening is this is bending. So as you can tell, when you try to remove this tube from the actual water pump itself. The tube is supposed to be steel, and the water pump is, of course, aluminum. When you put steel into aluminum, they corrode. It's not going to want to come out of there. It's having a very big issue trying to come out. And, of course, it's also generally going to be rusted in this way. As we were trying to get it out, we noticed that the rust kind of formed a hole right along here, right where you can see. And at this point, this is completely trash. So there's no reason why you wouldn't want to replace that at the same time as the water pump. So next what we're going to do is get this tube out of the way because we want to get to a hose that's located under there, and it's just much easier overall. I'm going to loosen this clamp. And then I'm going to press on this green tab all the way like that and remove this line from the intake, draw this off of here, and just kind of set it aside. So just real quick, here's the new tube. You can see we have this thick hose that comes over like that. That's actually going to be this hose right here, and it leads right underneath the throttle body. The other smaller hose, or longer hose, but thinner, comes all the way up. Let me find it real quick. Along here. And then if I give it a tug, you can see it along the back side of the intake there. So we would just disconnect it right there, draw it out of here, and do the same thing right there, and then we can just get this right out of the way. To remove this clamp, sometimes you can squeeze it with your fingers, some pliers, or even a clamp tool. I'm just going to use the clamp tool, because why not? Slide that clamp so it's away from the end of the hose. Now we want to try to break this free, but you definitely don't want to break the metal part that it's connected onto. Just keep that in mind. If it seems like it's stuck on there, it couldn't hurt to just use a pick, get underneath there a little bit, try to break it free before you go ahead and tug. I just like to take the clamp right off of here before I get the hose out. Now I'm just going to grab onto the hose down here, and I'll draw it right out of there. That's the reason for taking the clamp off. It's one less thing to get caught on everything on the way out. Now let's work on the thicker hose. Like I said, it's right underneath the throttle body. Give it a nice squeeze. I'm going to try to push the clamp down and off the hose if possible. Once you have the clamp off of here, you could try using some pliers to see if you can break it free. I can get it to spin a little bit, but it really doesn't want to come off, especially when I tug on it. You could also use a pick like this. Try to get in between the tube and the hose itself. See if you can get out anything that might be causing it to be stuck up on there. If this doesn't work for some reason, maybe you're having a hard time getting a pick in there or you don't even have one, you could of course just use something as simple as a razor blade or a knife of some sort and very carefully just cut the hose. There we are. If your tube looks like it's in poor condition, go ahead and try to scrape it clean, and then of course use some sandpaper if you need to. Let's get this hose off of here as well. Let's use our pick, see if we can get under this. Feels like it's starting to come up. Next we're going to take off this bracket right here. You can see that there's two studs with nuts on them. We're going to spray those with a little bit of penetrant for good measure. Let's remove those nuts. So next we're going to take off the bolts right here. This one, as you can tell, the power steering pump pulley is in the way. Just use a wrench and we'll try getting it out of there. Can't get it. As you can tell, this bolt comes right through here and then all the way over to there, which is where the threaded area is. I'm going to spray down the entire area. There we are. Okay, so we got that nice and loose. At this point, you would notice that you'll be able to move this bracket around, which is great. But I'm just going to go ahead and put that back on there just like that, so I can remove this clamp and get our lower hose off of here. Let's loosen this. Slide that clamp right down. So now it's going to be time to take our bolts out of our water pump. An easy way to remember where each one of those bolts or even nuts goes is to put them right into or near your new water pump. And then of course once you clean everything down and it comes time to put on the new water pump, we'll just swap them over to the old one. This out of here. So now just keep in mind that we used our 15mm to remove these two from this side right here on the driver's side. If you were to look over on the passenger side, you're going to see two more 15mm fasteners. So now I'm just going to use a swivel socket and an extension, and I'll get to this one. Now we're going to use our 10mm and start removing the rest of the bolts. Now that we have all the bolts out, just keep in mind that there's going to be a lot of coolant that comes out of here. Of course, we have our collection bucket under there, but just double check to make sure it's lined up. I'm going to give this a light bonk. I'm just going to draw this off of here. And of course, be careful for our wiring and anything that we might get caught on. Let's slide this right out of here. Before we go ahead and install our brand new water pump, we want to make sure that we have the area that it's going to be mounted to as clean as possible. You don't want any raised areas, and you definitely don't want any leftover gasket on there. Use your rag. That's going to help you take a look. Anything you happen to see, use a nice razor blade or a scraper, whatever you happen to have, and just clean it up. So I cleaned up the whole area where the mounting surface is going to be, and something else I'd like to note is while you're removing your mounting bolts, if you happen to notice that some of the studs pulled out, you need to go ahead and make sure you put those back in. If you were to hold a stud in something like a vise or even some locking pliers, you should be able to remove the nuts. There should be a stud here, here, and here. That's 3 on the passenger side. And then over on the driver's side, you're going to have another one here. And then there's going to be one right here, but this one's actually going to go on after we have the gasket and the water pump on there. Now it's going to be time to install our gasket. So I'm just going to take it. And it should fit right over those studs. If for some reason it doesn't seem like it wants to fit over them, more than likely you just have it backwards. Here we are. Okay friends, now it's going to be time to get our brand new water pump inside the vehicle. I'm going to line up this with the studs as much as possible, and then of course we'll slide it in. Get the bracket right out of the way. As you slide this in, you want to make sure that your wiring harness is clear. This one right here is right behind there. I did that so you can see that that would be very bad. Get that right out of the way. There we are. I'm going to start on some of these nuts so it can't go anywhere. Now it's going to be time to tighten up our mounting bolts and nuts. With that said, the torque for them is going to be 21 foot-pounds, which really isn't very much. So all we're going to do right now is bottom them out, and then we'll torque them. Let's torque all these to 21 foot-pounds. Let's get this bracket on here. Should line up perfectly. If you notice it's sitting a little off kilter, more than likely it's because you switched these 2 studs on accident. Now we're going to torque these to 21 foot-pounds. So now we're just going to torque these bolts to 35 foot-pounds. Now it's going to be time to get our tube into the water pump. Make sure you put a little bit of lubricant on your gasket right there. You can use a little bit of grease or maybe even a little bit of engine oil. Just going to come right along here, line it up. We want the hole that's facing in towards the engine to line up with the hole on the water pump, and this one that's farthest towards me, or the radiator, would be the one that's going to be sticking out past the water pump area. Just line this up, give it a little wiggle, it should slide right on down. Now we're going to take our mounting bolt, put it all the way in, bottom it out, and then we'll torque it to manufacturer specifications. Torque this to 89 inch-pounds. I'm just going to take off this clamp, and I'll reinstall it once we get this around the back side of the intake. Okay, so the way that I put the hose down through here, it's much easier if you just go along the side of the coil and along the intake and just kind of like bring your hands along here. And then once you have it towards the back so you can grab it with your right hand, make sure that you push it underneath the intake so it'll be nice and safe under there. Once you've done that, it should come right up here. And then of course we're going to put back on our clamp and slide it right on. There we are. So now let's get this wide hose on there. I'm squeezing the clamp. If you want to use a little bit of lubricant on the end of that tube, it's probably a good idea. It'll help you get it on there. Start it on. Squeeze my clamp. And hopefully put it on the rest of the way. There we are. Make sure it's on. That feels good. Let's get this hose on there now. Just going to try to set that right back where I got it from. Obviously, we don't want our wires hanging around like this. Take this piece, put it on the stud, put this piece right in there. That feels good. If either of them are broken, just use a wire tie. They need to be secure. Let's get this lower hose on here. course, we'll get our clamp up here. As you tighten this, you want to make sure that the hose stays all the way level, of course. Make sure it's nice and tight. Give that a nice wiggle. It's nice and tight. Now it's going to be time to get our water pump pulley on here. Start in all of our bolts, and then we'll snug them up and torque them to 89 inch-pounds. Just going to take my screwdriver. I'm going to go right through here like this. It's going to give me something to pry against. Let's get this back on here. Snug it up. Make sure it's nice and tight. Reconnect this in, listen for a click. Let's go ahead and get this off of here. Just a little rubber boot, protects the threads. Now it's going to be time to get our serpentine belt on the vehicle. Take a quick look at the way that I have the belt routed. Comes around the crank, up and over the water pump, to the power steering pump. All the way across to your idler pulley, over that to the alternator. Comes around that alternator, then down and around your serpentine belt tensioner here, and then we have our other idler pulley, and then of course back around to the crank. With it set up the way I have it, at this point I'm going to relieve tension on the belt tensioner here, and continue putting the belt over the last pulley, which I left as the power steering pump. We'll get this just like that. Now you need to double check your belt. Make sure it's sitting perfectly around all of your pulleys. If it seems like it's falling off on one side, or you can see a rib on one of your pulleys, you know your belt's not on properly. Make sure you feel down and underneath your crank right here. That's super important. And of course the power steering pump. That looks great. Okay, let's squeeze this clamp and put our lower hose on there. All the way on. And then of course release the clamp. Make sure it's nice and tight. Now it's going to be time to get our fan shroud and our fan back into the vehicle. I like to put them in both at the same time, just like this. As you go down, just be careful not to let anything hit up against those radiator fins. There we are. Just going to try to get this shroud so it's not falling down too much on me. And now, of course, we'll start on our fan. The hardest part's just getting this started. You have to find that first thread. Once it's on, we'll just bottom it out, and then we'll snug it up. Now we're going to take our two mounting bolts. We'll start one in on this side, one in on the other side, and then we'll snug them up. Time for the upper radiator hose. I always just try to line it up as close as possible to how I removed it. Awesome. Okay friends, now it's going to be time to fill our cooling system. There's a couple different ways you can go about doing this. You can use a funnel and try to fill it up. Of course, run it for a little bit. You're going to have to keep refilling it and keeping an eye on the fluid. You could also use a vacuum bleeder. That's the best way because it'll make sure it gets out all the air. I'm going to go with the assumption you don't have the special tool. So I'm just going to go ahead and show you to fill it up with the funnel just like this. As you fill it, you want to make sure that you fill it with the manufacturer's specified fluid, which would be Ford Gold. You can also use a universal coolant, such as like a vanilla, but you definitely don't want to use green or Dex Cool. With that said, go ahead and fill it up, burp out all the fluid, watch your thermostat, check for leaks, take it for a road test.